By noon, every one of those 96 homes could legally belong to me. I said it quietly, but the words carried across courtroom for like the click of a deadbolt in an empty house. The ceiling vents hummed above us. Somewhere behind me, a paper coffee cup crumpled in somebody's hand. Across the aisle, Patricia Wexler sat perfectly still in a cream-colored suit, one polished fingernail resting on the blue leather folder she had carried through every hearing. Behind her, a projection screen showed an aerial photograph of Wexler Creek Estates, 6 curved streets, a clubhouse, a fountain, and 96 roofs arranged across 67 acres of land my family had never sold. Patricia smiled at me the way people smile at a waiter who has brought the wrong check. Calm, patient, certain the mistake belonged to someone else. Her attorney rose and buttoned his jacket. Your Honor, Mr. Cole has produced tax receipts, family photographs, and personal recollections. What he has never produced is an original deed establishing ownership of the disputed parcel. I felt Laura Mitchell shift beside me, but I kept my eyes on Patricia. She had 3 attorneys, 2 representatives from Bellstone Residential, and enough recorded paperwork to make a lie look official. 3 banks had sent counsel. 42 homeowners filled the benches behind us. Some looked angry. Others looked terrified. Every one of them had signed a mortgage for a house built on ground that still carried my grandfather's boundary lines beneath the asphalt. I reached under the table and lifted the steel document box onto the polished oak surface. It landed with a dull metallic thud. The box was gray, dented along one corner, and stained with the dark brown scars of 30 years in a farm shed. A faint smell of machine oil rose from the seams. I remembered that smell from my grandfather's hands, from the tractor barn, from the workbench where he taught me that paper mattered only when a man knew where to keep it. Patricia's smile widened. She thought I had brought a family souvenir. Something sentimental. Something useless. The brass latch resisted my thumb for half a second, then snapped open with a clean, sharp click. The sound stopped the whispering behind me. Even the judge leaned forward. I did not lift the lid yet. At the back of the courtroom, 2 state investigators sat beside a county records auditor. Patricia had not noticed them when she walked in. She had also failed to notice Richard Bell staring at the floor instead of sitting beside her. That mattered. By then, I knew about North Valley Holdings. I knew about the missing 3rd page. I knew who had authorized the electronic replacement of my grandfather's property record, and I knew Patricia had continued collecting HOA fees after receiving formal notice that every home in her development sat on disputed land. She thought this hearing was about an old farmer's grandson asking for money. She still did not understand that the box in front of me could cost her the HOA, her real estate license, and every ounce of credibility she had spent 20 years building. I placed my palm on the lid and looked at the aerial photograph behind her. 11 months earlier, that same land had been hidden from me by an electronic gate and a private security guard. I had driven home expecting gravel, pecan trees, and the weathered red barn my father built. Instead, I found fresh asphalt, sprinkler mist, and 96 houses standing where my family name had been erased. Or at least, where Patricia believed it had been erased. 11 months earlier, the smell reached me before the houses did. Hot asphalt, fresh-cut pine, wet concrete, and the sharp chemical sweetness of new sod drifted through the open windows of my truck as I turned off County Road 12. I slowed down because I thought I had missed the entrance. The gravel lane my father and I had patched every spring was gone. In its place stood 2 stone pillars, an electronic gate, and a polished sign surrounded by white flowers. Wexler Creek Estates, private residential community. I sat behind the wheel with both hands resting on the cracked leather, listening to the turn signal click even though there was nowhere left to turn. Beyond the gate, rooftops rose where our eastern pasture had been. Gray shingles, white siding, matching mailboxes. Sprinklers hissed. Across lawns that had not existed the last time I stood there. A security guard stepped from a small booth and tapped on my window. "Can I help you, sir?" I looked past him toward the old pecan tree near the center of the property. My grandfather had planted it when my father was born. Now it stood inside a landscaped traffic circle, surrounded by decorative stones and a metal bench. "I am here to see my farm," I said. The guard glanced at the clipboard in his hand. "There is no farm here." His answer came too quickly, as if he had already given it to someone else. I pointed through the gate. That tree was in my grandfather's front field. The red barn should be about 200 yards behind it. He followed my finger, then shook his head. This is private property. Residents and approved guests only. A family rolled past us in a golf cart. The father raised one hand in a friendly wave. Two children sat in the back holding melting ice cream cones. They had no idea they were crossing the place where my mother taught me to ride a bicycle. I pulled my truck onto the shoulder and stepped out. Gravel should have crunched beneath my boots. Instead, the soil struck smooth black pavement still warm from the sun. On the far side of the gate, a sales board displayed a map of 6 curved streets and 96 numbered lots. A bright red banner stretched across the bottom. All homes sold. I counted the streets twice. Cedar Run cut directly across our hay field. Briar Court ended where the equipment shed had stood. The clubhouse occupied the rise above the creek, exactly where my father built the red barn with his own hands. My mailbox lay half-hidden behind a row of ornamental grass. The wooden post was cracked. The faded metal numbers still read 417. Someone had pulled it from the ground and tossed it aside like scrap. I walked toward it, but the guard moved between me and the gate. "Sir, I need you to return to your vehicle." "My name is Nathan Cole," I said. "My family has owned this land since 1949. His radio crackled. A woman's voice answered from the other end, calm and polished. "Keep him there. I am coming." Less than a minute later, a white Range Rover appeared beyond the traffic circle. It moved slowly, almost ceremonially, while the sprinklers threw silver mist across its path. The vehicle stopped beside the gate. Patricia Wexler stepped out holding a dark blue leather folder against her chest. Her cream blouse looked untouched by the heat. She studied my work boots, my faded truck, and the old mailbox at my feet before offering me a thin professional smile. "Mr. Cole," she said, as though she had been expecting me for years. "I was wondering when you would finally show up." Patricia stopped several feet away from me, close enough for her perfume to cut through the smell of hot pavement. She opened the blue folder with the careful confidence of someone unveiling a winning hand. "Your family sold the eastern parcel in 1996, she said. 67 acres transferred to North Valley Holdings, then legally conveyed to Bellstone Residential. Every title was reviewed. Every permit was approved." She held out a photocopy. The paper felt warm from the sun. Across the bottom sat a signature that was supposed to belong to my grandfather, Earl Cole. I had watched that man sign feed invoices, birthday cards, tax checks, and the back of every photograph he considered worth saving. He always made the top of the letter E with a narrow loop, then dragged the final stroke beneath his last name. The signature in Patricia's folder had no loop, no underline. It looked practiced because it had been. "This is not his signature," I said. Patricia gave a small laugh. "That is an emotional reaction, not legal evidence." The guard shifted beside her, while 2 construction workers slowed down to listen. A woman watering flowers near the gate turned toward us. Patricia noticed the audience and raised her voice just enough. "The county recorded this transfer nearly 30 years ago. Your family stopped maintaining the parcel. Taxes were reassigned. The land changed hands. Bellstone developed it. 96 families now live here." She said the number like it erased everything that came before it. I studied the deed again. The legal description ran through several measurements, then ended with a reference to a survey attachment. That was not included. "Where is the full boundary description?" I asked. "Everything relevant is in the county file." "That is not what I asked." Her smile tightened. She removed another document from the folder. "Mr. Cole, we understand that seeing this development may be difficult. Bellstone is prepared to offer you $20,000 in exchange for a complete release of any personal or historical claims." She extended the paper and a silver pen. The sprinklers clicked behind her. Water hissed across the new grass and darkened the edge of the pavement. I looked through the gate at Cedar Run, the street laid over our hay field, and then at the children circling the old pecan tree on bicycles. $20,000 would not have covered one of the driveways they had poured across my property. "You are offering me money to stop asking questions," I said. "We are offering you closure." "Then why do you need my signature?" For the first time, the smile left her face. Only for a second, but I saw it. Her fingers pressed into the blue leather until it creaked. "You are not fighting me," she said quietly. "You are fighting 96 homeowners, 3 banks, the county, and a development company with attorneys who bill more in one afternoon than most people earn in a month." I handed the photocopy back without taking the pen. No, I said. I am fighting one signature. Patricia slid the papers into the folder and snapped it shut. The sound was sharp enough to make the guard look at her. Then you should prepare to lose, she said. She turned toward the gate, but I called after her. What happened to the barn? She paused without facing me. There was no barn listed on the approved site survey. That answer told me more than she intended. The barn had stood there for 70 years. If it had vanished from the survey, someone had removed more than an old building. Someone had removed the history attached to it. Patricia climbed into the Range Rover and drove away beneath the spray of the sprinklers. I watched the white vehicle disappear between rows of identical houses, then looked down at my grandfather's mailbox lying in the weeds. I picked it up with both hands. The wood was splintered, but the metal box was intact. So were the numbers. 4, 1, 7. They had changed the road, the records, and the name on the gate. They had not changed the address my family had paid taxes on for generations. I carried the old mailbox into the county records office the next morning because I wanted one thing in the room that had not been rewritten. The building smelled like dust, toner, and burnt coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed above rows of gray cabinets, while a printer coughed out property reports behind the front desk. Harold Finch had worked there for 37 years. He was thin, silver-haired, and wore reading glasses held together at one hinge with clear tape. When I gave him the parcel number from my family tax receipts, his fingers stopped over the keyboard. Coal Farm, he said. I have not heard that name in a while. The electronic file looked perfect at first. Too perfect. It showed the 1996 transfer to North Valley Holdings, a second transfer to Bellstone Residential, zoning approval, utility easements, construction permits, and 96 individual lot descriptions. Every stamp sat in the right place. Every date followed the one before it. Harold printed the original deed reference and slid the pages across the counter. I read the legal description slowly. It began at the northern iron pin, followed the creek for 840 feet, turned east along the Pecan line, then stopped in the middle of a sentence. The next page began with the words returning to the point of beginning, but it never explained how the boundary got there. A section is missing, I said. Harold adjusted his glasses and counted the page numbers. 1, 2, 4. He looked back at the screen. The system says 3 pages total. The document says 4. He opened an older index program, the kind with green letters on a black background, and searched the recording book from 1949. The entry appeared after several seconds. Warranty deed. Earl Cole family tract. For pages. Survey attached. Harold leaned closer. The humming lights seemed louder. You were right, he whispered. There should be another page. He left the desk and disappeared through a secured door. I waited beside a rack of subdivision maps while the wall clock clicked through 12 slow minutes. When he returned, he was carrying an empty folder. The paper copy is not in the book, he said. It was removed for preservation scanning in 2004 and never returned. Who authorized that? Harold checked a handwritten log. His jaw tightened. County Development Review. Bellstone had submitted its first zoning request 3 weeks later. Harold lowered his voice. I can pull the scanning history and the access records, but not from this terminal. He wrote a file number on the back of an old business card and pushed it toward me. Before I could take it, a woman in a navy suit stepped from the secured hallway. She introduced herself as the deputy records administrator and informed Harold that his access to archived land files had been suspended pending a system audit. Her words were polite. Her timing was not. Harold folded the card beneath his palm until she walked away, then passed it to me without speaking. When I returned to the farm that afternoon, a yellow excavator was working near the former barn site. Its engine growled behind the gate as the bucket lifted dark soil and dropped it into a truck. Patricia stood beside the clubhouse in sunglasses, watching the work. She raised one hand when she saw me, not as a greeting, but as a warning. They were not maintaining the property. They were searching it. Whatever had disappeared from the county file, Patricia believed another copy might still be buried beneath my father's barn, and she intended to find it before I did. The first hearing lasted less than 40 minutes, but it felt long enough to erase a century. Laura Mitchell stood beside me at the county courthouse with 3 folders, a survey map, and every tax receipt my family had saved since 1949. Across the aisle, Patricia sat behind 2 attorneys from Bellstone Residential and one from the Homeowners Association. Their table was covered with binders, title reports, bank letters, and permits stamped in blue ink. Mine held an old mailbox number and a missing page. The judge listened carefully, then asked the question I already feared. Mr. Cole, do you have the original deed? I looked at Laura. She answered for me. Not yet, Your Honor. We have evidence that the county record is incomplete and that the disputed transfer may contain a forged signature. Bellstone's attorney rose before she finished. He spoke about 96 occupied homes, 3 lenders, utility contracts, school enrollment, and families who had purchased property in good faith. He made the development sound less like a construction project and more like a living organism that would collapse if the court touched it. The judge denied our request for an emergency halt. She did not dismiss the case, but she refused to freeze sales, fees, or property operations without stronger proof. Patricia did not smile until we stepped outside. Then the cameras found her. A local reporter held a microphone near her face while residents gathered behind her carrying signs that read "Protect Our Homes" and "Stop the Coal Claim." Patricia lowered her voice into that calm, practiced tone she used when she wanted a lie to sound compassionate. These families should not have to fear losing everything because one man has returned with an unverified family story. The words followed me across the courthouse steps. People stared. A man near the sidewalk called me a speculator. Someone else asked how much money I wanted. I kept walking until a woman in a denim jacket stepped in front of me. She was holding the hand of a girl about 8 years old. My name is Emily Carter, she said. I live at 47 Cedar Run. Her daughter pressed closer to her side. Emily's eyes were tired, not angry. Are you going to take our house? The courthouse traffic moved behind us. Tires hissed over damp pavement. I wanted to tell her that the land was mine, that my father had repaired fences there, that my grandfather had paid taxes while Patricia was still learning how to sell houses. None of that answered her question. I do not know what the court will decide, I said. That is not what I asked. I looked at her daughter, then at the folded mortgage papers under Emily's arm. I am not trying to make your family homeless. Her shoulders loosened. Slightly, but she did not thank me. She had no reason to trust me yet. That evening, Patricia held the clubhouse grand opening. Red ribbons stretched across the front steps. Music drifted over the new lawns. The smell of grilled hamburgers floated through the air while children chased balloons beneath the pecan tree. I stood outside the gate and watched Patricia raise a pair of silver scissors. Behind her, the clubhouse covered the exact rise where my father's barn had stood. The crowd counted down. The blades closed with a bright metallic snap. Everyone applauded. Patricia lifted the ribbon like a trophy and looked directly at me through the gate. For 1 second, the sound took me back 30 years, to my grandfather kneeling beneath the barn floor and turning the stiff latch on his steel document cabinet. I had forgotten about that cabinet until the scissors closed. Patricia thought the excavator had already cleared everything that mattered. She was wrong. The barn was gone, but the concrete footing still followed the old foundation line, and my grandfather never stored important papers where rainwater could reach them. He stored them beneath the workbench, inside a steel box bolted below the floor. While Patricia celebrated above it, I finally knew where to dig. Laura obtained a limited inspection order the next morning, and by sunrise I was standing inside the gate with a survey vest, a shovel, and a court-approved map folded beneath my arm. The air smelled like wet mulch and fresh concrete. Sprinklers clicked across the lawns while residents watched from porches, coffee mugs held close to their chests. Patricia arrived before I reached the old foundation. Her white Range Rover stopped beside the clubhouse, and she stepped out holding the blue folder. You have 4 hours, she said. You may inspect the foundation line. You may not disturb community property. Laura held up the judge's order. Anything located beneath the former coal structure may be examined. Patricia looked at the paper, then at me. There is nothing beneath it. She said it too quickly. I followed the old barn measurements from memory. 32 feet from the northern footing. 12 feet west of the drain channel. The clubhouse patio covered part of the foundation, but a narrow strip of compacted soil remained behind a row of decorative shrubs. I pushed the shovel into the ground. The first 6 inches were loose fill. Below that, the soil turned hard and gray. Every strike brought up pieces of old mortar, rusted nails, and splinters darkened by time. Patricia stood 20 yards away, pretending to read messages on her telephone. After 40 minutes, the shovel struck metal. The sound was low and solid. Not a pipe. Not construction scrap. I dropped to one knee and cleared the soil with my hands. A steel corner emerged beneath the dirt, bent inward but unmistakable. The smell of damp iron rose into the morning heat. My grandfather's cabinet had been torn from its bolts and crushed beneath the demolition fill, but the door remained sealed. We lifted it onto a plastic sheet. One hinge had collapsed. The lock was packed with dirt. I used penetrating oil from my truck and worked the key I had carried since my father's funeral. The first turn failed. The second produced a dry internal scrape. On the third, the latch released. Inside, wrapped in waxed cloth, lay a stack of papers tied with a narrow leather cord. The top sheet carried the raised seal of the county recorder and the date May 17, 1949. My thumb passed over the impression, and for a moment I could smell machine oil from my grandfather's workbench as clearly as if he were standing beside me. Laura unfolded the document on the hood of my truck. 4 pages, all numbered, all signed. Page 3 described the eastern boundary in exact measurements, following the pecan line, crossing the spring channel, and ending at a carved limestone marker. 67 acres. Every house in Wexler Creek Estate sat inside it. Patricia walked closer, her shoes clicking against the patio. An old document does not invalidate recorded ownership, she said. Laura did not look up. No, but an original deed with a missing recorded page creates a serious problem. Beneath the deed was my grandfather's survey notebook. One entry had been underlined twice. West marker set below spring stone. Earl Cole, 1949. I checked the coordinates against the development map. The location fell beneath the front steps of the clubhouse, less than 15 feet from where Patricia had cut the ribbon. I looked toward the fountain. Water spilled over pale stone and whispered across the basin. At the edge of the lowest step, half covered by concrete, a gray corner showed through. I had noticed it on my first day at the gate. Now I knew what it was. Patricia had built her clubhouse over my grandfather's boundary marker, but she had not destroyed it. She had preserved the one witness she could not persuade, edit, or remove from a county file. Laura would not let me celebrate. She folded the deed, sealed it inside an evidence sleeve, and told me the truth was only useful if we could prove Patricia knew she was lying. By noon, certified notices went to Wexler Creek Estates, Bellstone Residential, North Valley Holdings, all 3 banks, the title insurance company, and the county development office. Each notice stated that the eastern parcel was under active ownership dispute and included the recording number from 1949. Patricia signed for hers at 2:14 that afternoon. I know because Laura saved the delivery receipt. The next morning, the Homeowners Association sent residents a message saying there was no credible threat to their property and that normal operations would continue. Patricia raised monthly dues by $75 to cover what she called emergency legal protection. 2 days later, she signed a refinancing agreement against the clubhouse. Then she authorized the sale of the model home at the corner of Cedar Run. Every signature went into Laura's growing file. Do not interrupt her, Laura told me. She has been warned. Now she is choosing. Waiting was harder than digging. I drove past the gate every morning and watched Patricia move through the neighborhood as if nothing had changed. Her Range Rover stopped at the clubhouse. Her assistant carried the blue folder. Landscapers trimmed the hedges around my grandfather's marker while the fountain covered the stone with a thin sheet of water. Patricia thought activity looked like confidence. To me, it looked like evidence. Emily Carter called 3 nights later. Her voice was low, and I could hear a dishwasher running behind her. She said the board had ordered residents not to discuss the land claim with outsiders. The message also warned that sharing internal documents could result in fines. That made me start saving everything, she said. She forwarded emails, meeting notes, and a scanned memorandum Patricia had sent to Bellstone 6 months before my return. One line changed the case. Resolve historic coal documentation before final lender certification. Patricia had known my family records were a problem long before she met me at the gate. Another email instructed the county consultant to use the current digital parcel description and disregard incomplete legacy materials. Laura read it twice, then leaned back in her chair. She did not discover the missing page after construction, she said. She built around it. The money trail was even cleaner. Bellstone paid consulting fees to North Valley Holdings. North Valley transferred the same amounts, minus small deductions, into a property management trust controlled by Patricia. The deposits matched the dates of zoning approvals, title updates, and the clubhouse loan. Richard Bell had signed every outgoing payment. Patricia had signed every receipt. Harold Finch met us after hours in the parking lot behind the records office. Rain tapped against the hood of his sedan while he handed Laura a printed access log. Patricia's county consultant had opened the Cole file 11 times during the month before the third page disappeared from the digital archive. The final access entry showed a manual replacement upload at 6:42 in the evening. By then, the office had been closed for more than an hour. We had the original deed, the missing page, the boundary marker, the money transfers, and the access history. What we still needed was proof that Patricia continued the scheme after receiving formal notice. She provided that herself at the next board meeting. Emily recorded the audio from her seat near the back. A resident asked whether the association should pause fees and refinancing until the ownership issue was resolved. Patricia answered, "Without hesitation. There is nothing to resolve. I have reviewed the documents personally, and we will proceed as planned." The room applauded. I listened to the recording in Laura's office, surrounded by boxes of evidence and the dry smell of printer paper. Patricia's voice was smooth, steady, and certain. She believed 96 homeowners would protect her from one old deed. I did not need her to confess. I only needed her to keep putting her name beneath the lie. The courtroom returned to silence when I lifted the lid of the steel box. Laura removed the waxed cloth and placed the 4 deed pages beneath the document camera one at a time. The raised county seal caught the light. Patricia's attorney objected before page 3 reached the screen, but Judge Lawson raised one hand and told him to sit down. A document examiner testified that the paper, ink, signatures, and embossed seal were consistent with records created in 1949. Harold Finch followed. His voice trembled at first, then steadied as he explained that the original index listed 4 pages while the digital archive contained only 3. Laura displayed the access log. Patricia's county consultant had opened the Cole file 11 times before replacing the electronic record after normal business hours. Across the aisle, Patricia pressed both hands against her blue folder. The leather bowed beneath her fingers. Laura placed my grandfather's real signature beside the one on the 1996 transfer. Earl Cole's narrow loop and long underline were unmistakable. The transfer signature had neither. Then Emily Carter took the witness chair. She read Patricia's internal message instructing the board to continue fees and refinancing despite receiving formal notice of the ownership dispute. Patricia stopped looking at the judge. She looked at Richard Bell instead. Bell stared down at the table. The final question concerned the boundary marker. Bellstone's attorney argued that the old survey could not be verified because construction had removed every physical reference point. Laura turned toward the courtroom monitor. "Your Honor, the court-authorized excavation team is in position." The screen changed to a live view of the clubhouse steps. The fountain murmured in the background. A concrete saw started with a high mechanical whine. Gray dust lifted into the morning air as workers cut along the line marked by my grandfather's coordinates. They removed the decorative facing, then raised the lowest section of the step. Water spilled across the exposed soil. For several seconds, all we could see was mud and broken mortar. Then a worker brushed the surface with a stiff broom. Pale limestone appeared beneath the concrete. He poured clean water over it. 4 carved characters emerged on the screen. E.C. 1949. The courtroom seemed to inhale at once. Laura entered the coordinates from page 3 into the survey program. The digital marker landed directly beneath the stone. No adjustment. No margin of error. Patricia's face lost its color before Judge Lawson said a word. Laura then displayed the money transfers from Bellstone to North Valley Holdings and from North Valley into Patricia's trust. Richard Bell asked to speak with his attorney. 10 minutes later, his lawyer informed the court that Bell would cooperate and identify Patricia as the person who controlled North Valley's decisions. Patricia finally opened the blue folder, but the papers inside could not help her anymore. Every permit, every loan, and every homeowners association notice rested on a transfer that had never been valid. Judge Lawson looked at the deed, then at the stone on the monitor. "The ownership record is not unclear," she said. "It was concealed." Behind me, homeowners began whispering. Patricia turned toward them as though 96 frightened families could still shield her. I closed the steel box and rested my hand on the dented lid. She had buried my grandfather's marker beneath a fountain and removed one page from a county file. She had mistaken hidden for gone. The land had remembered exactly where the truth was waiting. Judge Lawson issued the ruling 3 weeks later, but the result had already begun moving through Wexler Creek estates before the ink dried. The court confirmed that my family owned the 67 disputed acres and declared the 1996 transfer invalid. North Valley Holdings had never possessed legal title. Bellstone had never owned the ground it divided into lots. Every mortgage, association fee, and clubhouse loan had been built on a document someone knew was false. Patricia arrived for the final hearing in the same cream suit, but the blue folder was gone. She sat alone at the end of the defense table while attorneys for the banks, the title insurance company, and Bellstone argued over who would pay for the damage. When Judge Lawson asked what remedy I wanted, the room turned toward me. Patricia finally looked up. I could see the calculation behind her eyes. She expected me to demand the houses, the roads, and every dollar the development had produced. She wanted the residents to fear me one last time. I stood and looked back at Emily Carter. Her daughter sat beside her holding a small notebook against her chest. Around them were teachers, mechanics, nurses, retirees, and young couples who had trusted recorded documents and professional assurances. They had not stolen my land. They had purchased a lie. I want the families protected, I said. I want clean titles issued without increasing their mortgages, and I want every cost paid by the companies and individuals who created this problem. Patricia's expression changed before her attorney could hide it. Laura then presented the settlement structure we had prepared. Bellstone and the title insurer would purchase permanent residential rights for all 96 lots. The banks would correct the loan records without penalties. The residents would keep their homes. The existing homeowners association would be dissolved, and every financial account would be audited. I would recover the clubhouse parcel, the common green, the creek corridor, and 18 acres surrounding the old barn site. The remaining compensation would come from Bellstone, North Valley, the insurance carrier, and Patricia's property management trust. The judge approved the framework. The county referred the altered records and financial transfers for further investigation. Patricia lost her position before she reached the courthouse steps. Her real estate license was suspended soon afterward, and the Range Rover she once parked beside the fountain disappeared when the lender reclaimed it. A month later, the residents voted to replace the association with a small elected council. Emily became its first treasurer. Every expense was posted publicly. Every rule required a community vote. No blue folders. No private fees. No threats disguised as neighborhood standards. We removed Patricia's name from the stone entrance and changed it to Coal Creek Community. I did not ask them to use my family name. They chose it. On a cool Saturday morning, we moved my grandfather's limestone marker from beneath the broken clubhouse step and placed it beside the old pecan tree. The carved letters were worn, but still clear. E.C. 1949. Emily's daughter helped press fresh soil around the base. Sprinklers whispered across the grass, and the air smelled like damp earth instead of new asphalt. I set the restored mailbox beside the road, numbers facing outward. 4, 1, 7. Patricia had used 96 homes to make her lie look larger than the truth. She never understood that truth does not need to be loud, expensive, or powerful. It only needs to survive long enough to be found.